Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. In the dimly lit living room, the five of us sat, immersed in a tension that had replaced the warmth that once filled this apartment. There had been many moments when Linda, my wife of 3 years, and I filled this space with laughter, hosting joyful family gatherings. But today was far from those happy memories. Linda sat across from me on the couch, her parents on either side of her. My mother was seated next to me in our worn-out armchair, holding my hand, offering silent, unspoken support. Though my mother was on my side, I could sense her inner conflict. I had asked her to remain silent during this conversation, assuring her I would handle everything. She reluctantly agreed, understanding the gravity of the situation. Since everyone had gathered, she had only spoken a few polite greetings. But before they arrived, she said something that stuck in my mind. Her voice was soft when she whispered, "I wish your father were here." I merely nodded, unable to admit that, truthfully, I was glad he wasn't. No son wants his father to witness the collapse of his marriage. I also knew that if my father were here, the tension would have only escalated. He and my mother-in-law Barbara had never gotten along. Their presence in the same room would have been a disaster. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head. "Do what you need to, son. We'll be behind you." And then he'd probably look at me with that knowing expression, meaning, "I told you so," with a slight smirk. Despite my previous thoughts, I had to admit, I missed him. His absence created a void, but it was necessary. I wanted this meeting to go as smoothly as possible so I could endure it emotionally. If he were here, the fragile calm would have shattered, and I couldn't afford that. I needed to remain focused, detached. The past few days had been a whirlwind of emotions, and I wasn't sure if I was mentally prepared for what was coming. The silence between us dragged on painfully until my father-in-law finally broke it. "Oliver, we appreciate that you agreed to this meeting," he began, his voice tense. I looked at him, noticing that he looked as exhausted as I felt. It was clear that none of us had been sleeping well. Suddenly, I was struck by a wave of compassion. I had always respected him, despite his tendency to be easily influenced by his wife and daughter. On the other side of the room, Barbara sat rigid, barely concealing her disdain for me. Her anger simmered just below the surface, and it was clear she blamed me for corrupting her daughter. To her, the fact that Linda and I had been intimate before marriage was just another nail in my coffin. Of course, she ignored the truth. Linda was not the innocent victim she portrayed her to be. But Barbara's hatred had never been based on logic. I knew this meeting would be particularly hard for her, and strangely, that gave me a small sense of satisfaction. She would have to swallow her pride, though I knew that saving this marriage was impossible. Any hope she had was false, and she would soon realize it. Linda sat between her parents, dressed simply, in jeans and a blouse. Even now, after everything that had happened, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she was. She wasn't a classic beauty, but her natural girl-next-door charm had drawn me in from the start. Despite the tear stains on her face and her red, swollen eyes, I still saw the woman I fell in love with 5 years ago. Looking at her, I felt a painful tightness in my chest, my heart beating heavily. On the outside, I appeared calm, almost indifferent, but inside the pain was fresh, raw. I had not forgiven her. Any compassion I might have felt was buried under the realization that her actions had brought us here. It all began with her behavior at her sister's wedding last week, when she made a scene that would now undoubtedly become the topic of all future family gatherings, but for all the wrong reasons. After that, Linda had moved in with her parents, and we hadn't spoken in person since. Our few phone conversations had been brief and unproductive. I stopped answering her calls when her excuses stopped sounding convincing. I began to realize that maybe I had never truly known my wife. "This has been hard on everyone," my father-in-law said softly. "But maybe we can still work through this, start healing, save the marriage." "Thank you, Mr. Thomas," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I understand your intentions, but you can't fix something that's so broken. Luckily, we don't have any children, which would complicate things further. Now we just need to figure out how to move forward with the divorce." At that moment, Linda's voice broke, and she, once again in tears, whispered my name. "Oliver." I didn't want us to break up. My gaze was fixed on her, my jaw clenched as I tried with all my might to maintain control and utter the words, "Calm down." What I hadn't expected was to see my wife chatting sweetly with her ex-boyfriend at her sister's wedding, and that's when I lost it. My frustration spilled over, and I'm sure it was obvious to everyone. I couldn't hide my anger. "Don't speak like that, Oliver," she responded, her voice dripping with icy mockery that sent chills down my spine. "This isn't your concern, Barbara. You can leave whenever you want." I watched her take a sharp breath, trying to suppress her irritation, but to my surprise, she didn't respond. For the first time, she remained silent. "Oliver, please forgive me." Linda's voice trembled with genuine regret. "A mistake, right?" I said, trying to stifle a smirk, but judging by the reactions around us, I didn't succeed. "Why don't you explain exactly what the mistake was, Linda? Was it getting so drunk at the banquet that you ended up practically rubbing against your ex in front of everyone? Or maybe when I pulled the two of you apart and you loudly declared that you didn't belong to me and could dance with whomever you wanted? Or maybe the mistake was mine, for watching you all this time. Because an hour later, when I turned away, you disappeared. And guess what? I found you again, having fun with him, just like before." "I know for certain that hitting him wasn't a mistake," I continued. "I punched him several times and only stopped when you started screaming that I'd kill him. Perhaps my mistake was not finishing the job, because he ran off like a coward as soon as I turned my back. So Linda, tell me, where exactly did this mistake happen? Was it when you looked down while dancing so close and gasped at what accidentally happened?" "Oliver, I was drunk. I'm sorry. I don't even know how it all happened," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not that hard to figure out, Linda. I'm sure Barbara explained it all to you when you were younger, the part where a man puts his part into yours, and when you get married, that man should be your husband. So spare me your excuses." Her father intervened, trying to calm things down. "Oliver, I understand how bad this looks right now." I was about to say something, but he raised his hand to stop me. "Listen, I know it looks awful, but it was just a one-time thing. I believe you're strong enough to forgive her." "Well, Mr. Thomas, I don't know if I can forgive a one-time thing, but is that the issue here, Linda?" I turned to her father, watching as Linda's face turned pale. "Because it seems like your daughter was so determined to be a good older sister at Samantha's bachelorette party that she gave her a hands-on lesson on how to do things right. And guess what? Samantha learned quickly. Last week, I received a rather explicit video. Technology, huh? Phones now can record with stunning clarity, not quite as perfect as professional filming, but clear enough to see the Thomas sisters in action." Linda covered her face with her hands, muttering, "Oh God." "I wonder if Liam knows about the strippers," I continued. "Seems like someone should inform him, don't you think? He'll probably consider it a one-time mistake too, don't you agree?" By this point, Harry and Barbara had turned as pale as their daughter, while Linda's sobs filled the tense, suffocating silence of the room. What happened next stunned me. I thought that exposing the stripper incident would be the final blow, the one that would break the silence forever. But I was wrong. At first, I couldn't believe she had stayed silent for so long. Then I began to wonder if she was preparing to save the situation, perhaps to convince me to stay in the marriage, at least long enough for me to make a mistake that she could use for a public divorce. That was my delusion. The dragon, in her furious rage, clearly believed that the best defense was a strong offense, and without hesitation, she launched her attack. "You hypocritical creature!" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You sit here pretending to be a paragon of virtue, all pure and untouchable." "Barbara, please stop!" Harry begged, his voice full of desperation. "No!" She cut him off sharply, paying no attention to his pleas. "I'm not going to sit idly by and let this worthless man threaten our family, especially when I have proof that he's just as guilty as Linda." The silence that followed her words was palpable, thick with tension and shock. Ignoring it, Barbara started rummaging through her oversized bag, what she casually referred to as her purse. After a few moments, with a flourish like a magician revealing a trick, she pulled out a small manila envelope. Half of me expected her to say, "Ta-da! Here, swallow this," she hissed, tossing the envelope in my direction. Inside, I found evidence. Photos of my car parked outside a shabby motel last month when I was supposedly on a business trip. There were also copies of the motel registration. My mother, who was sitting next to me, gasped softly and squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with disbelief and fear. "The alias Callum Smith wasn't the most creative," Barbara said with disdain in her voice. "But the motel clerk made sure to note down your license plate." In another part of the room, Linda buried her face in her hands, her sobs breaking the tense silence. Barbara wrapped her arms around her daughter, whispering, "Don't worry, dear. Mommy's got this under control. I told the ladies at church a couple of weeks ago." She scanned the room, adding with a note of triumph, "I'm sure half the town knows by now, and when they hear about today, they'll all understand. You were wronged first. All's fair in love and war." Outwardly, I remained calm, though inside my heart was pounding and my mind screamed that I needed to fight back. Perhaps I was still processing the shock of it all. Slowly, I reviewed the contents of the envelope and handed it to my mother, noticing the tears welling up in her eyes. I gently patted her hand and smiled, trying to offer some comfort. "All right, Barbara," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Before you decide to go full detective mode, maybe you should check your facts. That business trip? It was a company training. I have about 30 colleagues who can vouch that I didn't miss a single boring session during those 4 days. And while I was out of town, Linda's car was in the shop. Guess whose car she was using at the time?" I paused before continuing. "Oh, and one more thing you might want to consider. Do you remember Linda's colleagues at the clinic? Dr. Sammy, ring any bells? His full name is Dr. Callum Smith." Barbara's face froze in shock. "But," my father-in-law muttered, "he's older than me." "Exactly," I said with icy calm. "It seems your daughter has a thing for older men, maybe some unresolved daddy issues among other things. Good luck with family therapy." "Ollie," Linda whispered, her voice trembling. "I know. It was only once." I stood, feeling the weight of the conversation begin to crush me. Looking at the 3 people in my living room, I realized I couldn't continue this charade any longer. "I think everything that needed to be said has been said," I stated. "It's time for you all to leave." Harry got up and helped Linda to her feet, but Barbara remained standing as if paralyzed. For a moment I thought she was about to have a medical episode, a heart attack or a stroke, but then she pulled herself together and stood. Her gaze met mine, cold and unblinking. "I expected more from you, Oliver," she said, her words like icy shards. "But from you, Barbara, I never expected anything. You're just a hypocritical, moralizing fraud. Now get out of my apartment." Barbara stormed out, her fury evident in every step. To my surprise, Harry gave me a firm hug before following her. Linda was the last to leave. Her beautiful green eyes, red and swollen from crying, were filled with such deep sorrow that my own tears finally broke free. "Oliver, I don't even know how to begin to ask for your forgiveness," she whispered, her voice laden with regret. The guilt I carried within me was immense, but it was nothing compared to the all-consuming regret that overtook me. Regret for having entrusted my heart to someone like you, Linda. She burst into tears and hurriedly ran out of the room. When I closed the door behind her, the dam of my emotions broke, and I felt the full weight of what had happened. I leaned my back against the door, trying to maintain my composure, but the tears flowed despite all my efforts. The bitter truth was undeniable. I still loved her despite everything. This betrayal was unimaginable. I couldn't understand why she had cheated, but even knowing the reasons wouldn't change the inevitable. Our marriage was over. The pain, anger, and grief had settled deep within me, and I knew they would linger for a long time. My mother appeared and gently embraced me. "How are you holding up?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Not well, but I'll manage. I believe that one day happiness will come back to me. I think Dad would be proud of how I'm handling this." "Do you know what you'll do next?" she asked. I nodded slightly. There's not much left to save. I've decided to take Barbara's advice and start moving forward." There was nothing more to say. I had made up my mind to meet with Linda at her church on Sunday, so she could fully grasp the seriousness of her actions. And I was going to explore the possibility of filing a lawsuit against the doctor she had an affair with, if only to complicate his professional life. "That will certainly stir things up. What about Liam and Samantha?" Mom asked. "If I receive this video, then Liam might have as well. Even if not, he has the right to know. Maybe their marriage will survive this." I sincerely hoped they could work things out. If they managed to fix everything, it might prevent further infidelity, and their marriage could last longer than my short 3 years. I decided to write Samantha a letter and give her a week to tell Liam herself before I intervened. Mom smiled at me with understanding. "You're just like your father," she said, shaking her head. "It's a shame he couldn't be here today." She gave me a gentle smile and pulled a small voice recorder from her bag. "He asked me to record everything for him. It was hard for him not to be here. He had been disappointed when I asked him not to come. He understood my reasons, but I knew it hurt him. Now that so many of my future plans had crumbled, I felt lost." I took a deep breath and shook my head. "It feels like I've wasted 5 years of my life." "No, you haven't," she replied firmly. "You've learned hard lessons, but they'll serve you well in the future. Your next marriage will be stronger because of them." My next marriage? I couldn't imagine ever trusting someone enough to marry again. She smiled warmly at me. "Darling, you're only 29. It may take time, but you'll meet someone special. Someone who will be worthy of your trust and truly happy to be with you." Mom had always been an optimist. I couldn't help but smile when she leaned in to kiss me on the cheek. "And don't forget, I'm still counting on grandchildren one day." We both laughed, and in that moment of laughter, the tension in my chest began to ease. I realized that in time, I would find happiness again. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. As soon as I walked into the house, it was immediately clear that something was wrong. Harper stood awkwardly in the living room, nervously shifting from foot to foot, her hands tightly clasped together. 30 years of marriage had taught me to read her like an open book, and today her behavior was far from normal. She had returned from her dentist appointment a little earlier than I did, as usual. Usually, by the time I got home, Harper had already changed clothes and started preparing dinner. But today the kitchen was quiet. No smell of food, no signs of her usual evening routine. She was still in the same clothes she'd worn to work that morning. When her behavior changes, it's a sure sign that something is brewing. "Mason, we need to talk," she said, her voice tense with anxiety. I quietly sat down and gently responded, "Of course, dear." Now it was her turn to speak. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously. Harper hesitated for a moment, clearly searching for the right words. "This isn't easy to say," she began, her voice becoming more confident. "I want to separate, maybe even divorce." Her voice was gaining momentum. "I think a temporary separation is the best way to start, but I have to be honest. This might lead to a permanent break." "All right," I calmly replied. "I'll leave right now." I stood up and headed to our bedroom, catching Harper's gaze, a mix of confusion and disbelief. She clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. One of the hallmarks of our marriage had always been my ability to react in ways that surprised her. Harper was predictable. I was not. If my calm response had stunned her, what I did next left her completely speechless. Less than a minute later, I returned to the living room with 2 fully packed suitcases and placed them by the door. I pulled a small slip of paper from my pocket and handed it to her. "Here's where I'll be staying," I said, "and my new phone number. You can still reach me on my cell." I added one final condition. "There's just one thing you need to know. If you start seeing someone else, then we're done. This won't just be a separation, it'll be a divorce. But if you just need time to figure out your feelings, we can talk about coming back together when you've sorted it out." I won't tolerate being strung along while you explore other options only to return when it suits you. Before Harper could gather her thoughts, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Hi, Isabella. It's Mason. How about dinner on Friday night? I asked. Her response was immediate and playful. You already know the answer. I'll be there, probably without underwear, she teased. Smiling, I ended the call, grabbed my suitcases, and headed for the door. Harper stood frozen, watching me calmly walk to the car. That evening, Isabella and I had a simple steak dinner, nothing fancy, but pleasant enough. Eventually, we ended up at my apartment, where she brought me to the height of pleasure, just as the phone on the nightstand rang. Still wrapped around me, Isabella answered it. Hello? She responded, slightly breathless. Harper? She asked with a smirk. He's a little busy right now. I'll have him call you back later. Give him a little time to finish up. I think he'll be free in about half an hour, maybe longer if we're having a good time, she added with a laugh, then hung up. Turning to me, she started moving faster again, laughing. Wow, I never thought talking to someone's wife while I'm with her husband could be so much fun. We climaxed together, and after catching my breath, I picked up the phone. I dialed the familiar number that had been mine for so many years until today. Harper answered before the call could go to voicemail. Mason, is that you? Yes, it's me, I replied, barely holding back the satisfaction in my voice. Sorry I missed your call earlier. I was a little preoccupied. But now I'm free and calling you back. Mason, what the hell is going on? Harper's voice trembled, struggling to comprehend what was happening. You had everything prepared in advance, bags packed, a new place ready, even before I mentioned the possibility of living apart. And then, when I tried to call to discuss everything, another woman answered your phone. She practically admitted that she was with you. I wasn't going to be caught off guard when you announced the breakup. Surprisingly, the blow I received just a few minutes ago wasn't as strong as I expected. Isabella wasn't the type to make a scene. At least, that's the impression I had. I couldn't help but smirk, lazily running my fingers along the smooth line of her skin. If this was crucial to deciding whether Harper and I could rebuild our relationship, maybe it was worth discussing. But my thoughts were cut short by Harper's sharp voice slicing through the air. You're a liar. You promised we wouldn't sleep with other people while we were on a break. It was just supposed to be a time for reflection. I looked at her without showing emotion. That's not exactly what I said, Harper. I said that if you slept with someone else, it would guarantee a divorce. I never promised anything about myself. Her voice flared with anger. You're unbearable. How can you think the rules don't apply to you? If you can sleep with anyone you want, then so can I. What's fair for one should be fair for the other, right? I remained calm. Of course, Harper. You can do whatever you want. But if you do, it's over between us. I won't stay if you make a fool of me. By your logic, we should end everything right now because you've already crossed the line. Maybe we should start the divorce process on Monday morning, she threw back sarcastically. Isn't that fair? Not exactly, I replied calmly. You were the one who asked for the separation, not me. I didn't sign up for this. You're the one who cut off our relationship, our physical connection, without even asking me. You had a choice, Harper. That's the difference. And don't forget, I made it clear from the start. If you sleep with someone else, we're done. You never said anything about me. I paused, letting the tension hang in the air before continuing. But if you've made up your mind about divorce, then go ahead and file. It's your decision. Her tone softened slightly, uncertainty creeping into her voice. I don't know if I want a divorce, Mason, she admitted. I just needed space, time to think. I only asked for a separation. I shrugged, staying indifferent. Then there's no problem. You got your separation. But now you're sleeping with someone else, she countered, feeling her frustration rise again. And if I do the same, you'll leave me. That's not fair. Not fair? I echoed, my voice growing harder. I didn't ask for this separation, Harper. I didn't want any of this. I wanted us, our life, our marriage. You were the one who decided to tear it apart. And now you expect me to sit around without any intimacy while you figure things out? That's not going to happen. I leaned back, adding sarcastically, If it makes you feel better, you can come over 3 or 4 times a week and we can still sleep together." Her face twisted in disbelief. "What kind of separation is that? No one does that. The whole point of a separation is to create distance. You just don't get it." "I didn't get a manual on how separations work, Harper," I snapped. "But if you show up here and expect everything to fall back into place, don't think I'm going to hold back. I'm done playing by rules that only apply to me. Our marriage did that for far too long. Now I'm finally doing what I want, and I'm not giving that up." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. "So if you do show up, be prepared for what happens. Don't expect to just lie there like nothing has changed. Either show your best, or don't come at all." Harper's voice trembled, her shock displacing her anger. "What's happened to you? All I wanted was a little time to figure out if we could still save our relationship. And now, just a few hours later, you've become someone I no longer recognize. I can't shake the feeling that you've been deceiving me for years, acting in the shadows while I remained completely unaware." "That's absurd. I have never betrayed you and never even thought about leaving. All I've ever done is try to find a way back to myself, and that path led me to another woman." "We'll talk tomorrow," I said, abruptly ending the conversation. "Unbelievable." Isabella quietly laughed. "That conversation was surprisingly captivating. You really stood your ground against your wife? Did she just call me a scoundrel? I've always been cautious. It's been instinctual for me. It's what helped me avoid the pitfalls of life, unlike many others. But Harper, my wife, is the complete opposite. She rarely notices anything unless it's right in front of her." Harper was constantly talking about the new dentist at her clinic. This man, knee-deep in a divorce, described his soon-to-be ex-wife as deceitful and unfaithful, but to Harper, he was nothing less than a hero. Then suddenly, a few weeks ago, her endless chatter about him stopped. Every time I tried to bring him up, she dodged the topic. It was as if this man had just vanished without a trace. That sudden silence intrigued me far more than her endless conversations. So I took matters into my own hands. I tapped her phone, recorded her conversations, forwarded her emails to myself. I even hired a private detective. What I discovered was exactly what I suspected: a meticulously planned seduction. Dr. Smith, the charming dentist, had a clear plan: to get close to Harper. His divorce? A repeat of what had happened at his previous workplace. There were already rumors of unethical behavior from former patients. This guy was a slimeball. But to Harper's credit, she hadn't given in. Yet. She hadn't crossed the line into infidelity or destroyed our marriage. But Smith was slowly getting into her head, convincing her that separating from me wasn't a betrayal, that they could be together without crossing that final line. That's when I drew my line. If she wanted to stay in this marriage, she would have to keep her hands, and his, to herself. Isabella had recently joined our office, and we immediately hit it off. A widow, she had moved here to be closer to her daughter and grandchildren. When I told her what was going on with Harper and how I was planning to push her into an honest conversation, Isabella didn't hesitate to offer herself as the other woman. Monitoring Harper's messages, I knew she was planning to ask for a trial separation on Friday. That gave me time to come home at lunch, pack my things, and leave. I moved in with Isabella. She had 2 months left on her rental contract. From a distance, I continued keeping tabs on Harper. If she made even one wrong move toward Smith, I was ready to cut her off completely. Despite all of this, my loyalty remained steadfast. To Harper, to our children. Our son and daughter had already graduated from nearby universities and were building successful careers in neighboring states. I wasn't going to become an unfaithful husband or a serial dater. If Harper wanted to keep me, she'd have to fight for it. I wasn't going to beg her for love or affection, and even if we found a way to reconcile, it would never be the same. I wanted more from this marriage, more than just the occasional obligatory touch. I needed someone who was willing to meet me halfway, someone who wasn't afraid to break out of the usual boundaries. I was tired of living like a monk. After dropping Isabella off at the airport, I returned to the apartment and heard a knock at the door. To my surprise, Harper was standing there, her eyes filled with tears. I let her in, led her to the couch, and sat down beside her, patiently waiting for her to find the right words. After a long silence, she finally found the strength to speak, her voice weighed down by the burden she had carried for too long. "Mason, I've been such a fool," she began quietly. "I'm sure this won't surprise you, but for the last few weeks, Dr. Smith has been trying to get close to me. Strangely enough, you understand me better than I do myself. He convinced me to ask for a temporary separation so we could be together." Harper's voice was filled with deep regret as she confessed. "He said that if we were officially separated, it wouldn't be considered cheating, and that you would treat me better when I came back. But I was completely wrong. You were ready to leave for good. Your bags were packed, you had a new place, and even someone else was already waiting for you." She paused, her voice trembling as she continued. "And I thought I had a clever plan. Now I can't even fully grasp what I was trying to do. I had been plotting for so long, but I should have realized that you were one step ahead. When I called you that Friday night and a woman answered, almost admitting she was with you, I nearly collapsed. And when you called back, everything became clear. You really were with her." Tears welled up in Harper's eyes as she struggled with her words. "It hurts so much, Mason. I've been replaying everything you said over and over in my mind all weekend. Slowly, I came to realize you were right. I was the one who wanted the separation, not you." Her voice softened as she confessed, "My plan was to have some fun with Oliver Smith, then come back to you, thinking you'd never know. It was a terrible, selfish scheme. But you, Mason, you saw right through me from the start. You turned it all against me. Now you're the one who's been making love outside of our marriage without any guilt. If I had gone further and slept with Oliver, I would have ruined everything." She paused, reflecting on her actions before continuing. "After hours of self-pity, yelling at myself and wallowing in misery, it finally hit me. I understood what I'd been doing to us, what I had been doing to you, and I saw how quickly and decisively you acted in response to my selfish, thoughtless behavior. You won, Mason, and I deserved it. This morning I told Dr. Smith that he had crossed a line," she said, her voice more confident now. "And what? You just turned him away and now you want me to act like nothing happened?" I asked, disbelief clear in my voice. "I'm just supposed to forget that you almost destroyed our marriage because of that scumbag? That you put me through hell because some guy wanted to sleep with you? Harper, you're a beautiful woman, and men will always be interested in you. Am I supposed to live in fear that this could happen again with the next one who pays you attention?" "No, Mason, that's not it," she whispered. "And I wasn't the one who turned Smith away today. When he showed up at work, the police were already waiting for him in the parking lot. He was arrested. It turns out he's been accused of harassment. One of our patients, Mrs. Garcia, accused him of making advances on her while she was under anesthesia. And after that, other women started coming forward with similar accusations. He's a terrible person," Harper said with a bitter, grim smile. "That's the man I almost destroyed everything for, Mason. I'm not surprised, Harper. I always had a feeling he was a predator, a man without morals. But now that he's gone, do you think we can just move on?" I asked, the sharpness in my voice returning. "No, Mason," she replied slowly, carefully choosing her words. "I was hoping you would keep your promise, that you weren't lying when you made it. I've never lied to you, Harper, and I've always tried to keep my word. But what promise are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely puzzled by her sudden change in tone. "You said I could come to you 3 or 4 times a week. You said it would save you from having to convince other women to stay with you. Don't you remember?" Harper asked, her eyes searching mine for acknowledgement. "Yes, I remember now," I said, recalling that conversation. "But I also said I wasn't going back to the way things were." "I think I understand now, Mason," she whispered, her voice quiet but full of realization. "Mason, help me understand better." Harper's voice softened as she spoke. "I need you to promise me something in return. No more meetings with her, or with any other woman for that matter." By now, Isabella was likely high above the clouds and had no intention of coming back. As for me, no other woman even crossed my mind. Harper was the one I wanted, and my feelings for her were unmistakable, but I wasn't going to go back to her. She was going to cheat on me, and I couldn't forgive that. Go to hell, Harper. You're a lying cheater. I can never trust you, and besides, I don't believe you didn't cheat on me with that doctor. Goodbye. I swear I didn't cheat on you, she said with conviction. I don't believe you. You made your choice. You wanted freedom and now you have it. Enjoy it. I ended the relationship and I was moving on, perhaps even with Isabella. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. On Friday morning, my wife, with a casual yet unsettling ease, informed me of her evening plans, adding that she might not return until the next day. There was a smoothness in her voice, a rehearsed quality that made it clear, whatever I said, it wouldn't change her decision. She reassured me that she still loved me, but the coldness in her eyes said otherwise. This was my first real experience confronting the harsh reality of infidelity in marriage, something I had only heard about in movies, novels, or whispered conversations among friends. I stood there, absorbing her carefully chosen words. She spoke as though I should take pride in my ability to handle this, mentioning that she never had the chance to truly enjoy her youth before getting married, and claiming that monogamy was an unnatural construct for humans. She criticized society's rigid norms regarding relationships and intimacy. It's just physical, she declared. It's not love. She even promised that if I allowed her this freedom, she would pay more attention to me. I braced myself for the familiar justifications. She told me I had no say in the matter, emphasized her autonomy over her body, and pointed out that life is short, and she deserved every pleasure she could get, including being with other men. She didn't shy away from discussing the physical differences between them, as if that somehow justified her actions. This wasn't about intelligence or wealth. It was purely physical. For the record, I've never had issues with either. But how do you modestly state that you're a rather intelligent man with considerable financial success? It's hard to do that without sounding conceited. Professionally, I'm an engineer, and my work has brought me significant wealth. My wife never had any complaints about that. When she finally finished her speech, I could have easily responded with the anger bubbling up from my growing frustration. As she leaned in for what she called a farewell kiss, my response was simple. I'd rather not. There are moments when the absurdity of a situation leaves you speechless, and this was one of them. Her expression twisted with shock, her mouth slightly open, clearly expecting me to start ranting about loyalty, vows, or perhaps even threaten revenge. But all I could offer was, I'd rather not. People often underestimate the power of restraint, the power of a quiet refusal. My simple rejection was my way of reclaiming some semblance of control. Of course, she immediately launched into a new tirade, accusing me of being disrespectful and calling my reaction childish. She finished by saying that I would have to accept her decision or learn to live without her. I'd rather not, I repeated, this time more calmly. For the first time, I saw a crack in her confidence. She hesitated, her resolve wavering. I didn't beg, didn't yell, didn't cry. I just stood there firmly holding my ground. Sensing her power slipping away, she changed tactics, offering compromises. She suggested that instead of staying out all night, she could return after the date, reminding me that I was still important, offering her body as consolation. Again, I replied, I'd rather not. That phrase seemed to dismantle her carefully constructed arguments, leaving her momentarily speechless. But then she switched to her familiar role as an attorney, something she never fully became. Years ago, when we were still dating, she struggled through law school. I vividly remember one of her classes where they drafted prenuptial agreements. At the time, she took it very seriously, and we eventually signed one, making it legally binding. So, when she threatened to take the house, the assets, and parade her lovers through my home if I decided to file for divorce, I simply stood there, waiting for the inevitable collapse of her arguments. She had barely finished speaking when I replied, I'd prefer not to do that. She didn't return that night for me to pull her back into my arms. Saturday passed without a trace, neither by day nor under the stars at night. It wasn't until the final light of Sunday faded that she finally appeared at the doorstep, looking utterly exhausted, as if life itself had drained every ounce of strength from her. She carelessly dropped her bag onto the terrace, where it landed next to the grill where I stood, focused on cooking ribeye. The steak sizzled, and its aroma filled the evening air. I didn't even glance in her direction. I thought, you wouldn't want to kiss me now, would you? My attention remained on dinner. I was brushing marinade on the meat and flipping the corn on the side. Will you make some for me too? She asked quietly. I'd prefer not to do that, I answered indifferently. I see, she sighed. I should have expected that. Is that your favorite phrase now? All I get from you is, I'd prefer not to do that, huh? She let out a disappointed breath. This is starting to get old, you know. I turned slightly to respond, but she cut me off. No, don't even say anything, I'm tired. Silence. That's your punishment for me, isn't it? Fine, but we can't avoid talking forever. You'll have to speak at some point. Is this it? Is this how it's going to end? Her voice trembled as she asked, Are you going to file for divorce? Desperation seeped into her words. 3 years together in college, then 15 years of marriage, 18 years together. Are you really going to leave because I wasn't home for 2 weekends while you explored? She took a deep breath, trying her hardest to stay composed. I've carried this weight for so long. I needed to feel something else, something I couldn't shake off. When we got married, I thought everything was clear. I love you, I always will. But I couldn't stop wondering what it would be like with another man. What's it like in bed? Would it be different? I needed to know the difference, to feel what it's like to not just be loved but to be conquered, to be the heroine of those novels where the cowboy or the estate owner sweeps the woman away. I'm sorry, but I had to experience that. You're an amazing husband, an incredible lover. But I needed to understand that I had to explore. God forgive me. Don't just stand there. Say something. Anything. Calmly, I placed the steak and corn onto a toasted bun, added a slice of grilled peach, and for the first time since she walked in, I looked her directly in the eyes. I'd prefer not to do that. Her face twisted in pain. No, please don't shut me out like this. Yell at me, be angry, hit me if that helps, but don't give me this cold silence. I know I messed up. I'll do anything to fix it. Just don't leave me like this. My response was the same. I'd prefer not to do that. Tensions were rising. No, I didn't cook her a steak. For a moment, I even thought about intentionally burning something. In the days that followed, she tried to start conversations with me, but every time, I calmly and firmly responded, I'd prefer not to do that. When she finally asked what I wanted instead, I just shrugged. I didn't walk away when she tried to talk to me, but I never asked for details about what had happened either. It was obvious she was desperately seeking reconciliation. The following Friday, she came home later than usual, nervously recounting a party with her colleagues, how they had a good time, laughing and drinking together. Then she noticed the lack of dinner and the way I was dressed, ready to go out. Her voice shook with uncertainty. What's going on? Are we going somewhere? She asked, her eyes searching mine. A moment later, realization dawned on her. Oh, you're not taking me with you, are you? Was that really my outcome? Are you going to come back to me? I slightly shook my head and replied with a familiar phrase. I wouldn't want to, I said, then turned away and left. My evening was already planned. I was going to have dinner with my parents, who had come for the weekend. I arranged for them to stay at a hotel by the river, far enough from the tense atmosphere of the house. They already knew about the situation, but we still had a wonderful evening, ending with dinner on a river cruise. When I returned home, it was 11 p.m., and I still felt clear-headed and balanced. I was met by my tear-streaked wife. Without saying a word, I immediately went to bed. I can't say what was going through her head, but when I woke up the next morning, the smell of breakfast was already spreading through the house. This time, she didn't wait for an invitation to speak. Last night was terrible, she began. You left me alone. I couldn't stop imagining you with someone else. It was an awful feeling, she admitted. I think I now understand what you went through when I was gone for that whole weekend. Can I ask you something and will you answer me honestly? Were you with another woman last night? Considering the facts, since I did spend the evening with my parents, one of whom is my mother, technically another woman, I answered honestly, yes. Her reaction was ambiguous. On one hand, the thought of me being with another woman clearly heightened her anxiety. However, my answer had a different meaning for her. It wasn't what she expected. Our conversation wasn't unpleasant. I finished breakfast, grabbed my golf clubs, and went out for the day. I spent the day playing golf with my father. Despite being 60, he still swung the club with the energy of his younger days. Many years ago, he earned respect working with the Special Olympics, first as a coach, and then over the years as a state director. During the game, we talked about everything except my marriage. I got home just in time to freshen up and get ready for dinner. As I was heading downstairs, dressed in a tuxedo and on my way to the garage, my wife stopped me halfway. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and her mouth slightly opened. "She must be special if you're dressed like that," she remarked. I just nodded. "Honestly," she added, "you look stunning. No one can compare to you when you're dressed like that." Our anniversary dinners were always unforgettable. "Whoever she is, she's lucky," she sighed. "You're not going to tell me who she is, are you?" I shook my head. "No. I see. I understand everything," she said quietly. "I know I ruined everything. I rejected you and spent that weekend humiliating you. I shouldn't have treated you like that." She continued recounting her weekend. "I'll regret it for the rest of my life. That Friday night, we stopped for a burger before the concert. He said we had great seats, so I dressed up. You saw me, didn't you? I looked good. But when we got there, the seats were so far away that I couldn't even see the stage with binoculars. And then he had the nerve to make me buy him a beer. And I was the one driving, my car, my gas, and I paid for dinner. My so-called exciting evening, it started with the stingiest man in town. On the way back, he tried to make a move on me. When we reached the neighborhood, I waited for the red light, jumped out of the car, and ran to a bar where a blues band was playing. He tried to follow me, but, you know Eric, the bouncer who works at the live shows there. I told Eric that this guy was harassing me and that I felt uncomfortable. Can you imagine? He acted as if I owed him something. Inside, I met a guy from work, who was there with friends. We spent the rest of the evening together, and later, since he was too drunk to drive, I gave him a ride home. But when we arrived, I faced the biggest emotional wreck I'd ever seen. He passed out, leaving me alone on his couch. The next morning, I woke up to find him sprawled across me, muttering something about how he was going to fix everything. My response was sharp, full of sarcasm. I asked how he could possibly do that, given his complete lack of masculinity. That's when I completely lost my bearings. Instead of seeing things for what they were, instead of appreciating what I had at home and coming back to you, I convinced myself that I needed to reclaim my femininity, to feel desired again. I ended up at a bar. I was about to leave with some guy when his wife burst in, her face blazing with anger. To deflect suspicion, I slapped him across the face and screamed, "So you're married?" Funny enough, I never took off my own wedding rings. Later, I wandered to a seaside diner. A man approached me, openly flirting. He was charming and kept the conversation flowing easily. He looked into my eyes, not at my body. I was almost ready to give in to his charm when suddenly 2 small children ran up, shouting, "Grandpa, Grandpa, we found you!" He disappeared faster than I could comprehend what had just happened. Then I booked a room at a rundown motel, bought a bottle of wine, and sat on the balcony, hoping to find peace and clarity. But below, a group of women, single, divorced, were talking loudly. Their conversation soon turned to men, and they started discussing their failed relationships, listing names and sharing humiliating details. I quickly realized my situation wasn't unique at all. They described their exes as lustful old men and misers. I couldn't help but agree. After all, no woman can expect every man to treat her as an equal or pay for everything. These women talked about married men, supposedly loyal, who cheated for no understandable reason. They discussed the variety of men they had dated, men from different cultures, races, religions, even political beliefs. They debated how important a man's size was compared to his ability to provide. They agreed that if you find someone who is both attentive and well-endowed, he's worth holding on to. I almost got up to return to you, but I stayed to hear more, and I'm glad I did. After that, I heard nothing else. I spent the rest of the night lost in thoughts of you. I woke up right there on the balcony, under the morning sun that had already begun to scorch my skin. I felt terrible in every way. The guilt over what I put you through weighed on me. My body ached after spending the night in an uncomfortable position on a lounge chair. My stomach churned from the awful food and 2 bottles of wine I drank the night before. My head throbbed from all of it combined. I arranged for a late checkout and collapsed back into bed. When I finally managed to get up, I took a shower, got dressed, and went back home. That night, when I left, I had every intention of betraying you, but I didn't go through with it. Somehow, fate intervened. It stopped me from making that mistake, reminding me that I belong only to you. Only you. Please forgive me. Please let me remain your wife. Let's forget this mistake and return to the happiness we had. Please. Her voice trembled, her eyes filled with tears. I couldn't help but feel pity for her. I really did feel pity, but what I couldn't feel was love. I looked into those tearful eyes I once adored and gave her my answer. I wished I didn't have to do it. I never told her about the other woman in my life, my mother. I didn't say whether I believed her desperate story about how she lost control that weekend. I said I loved her because I wasn't sure if I did or not. In everything else, I remained silent. And she, on the other hand, never stopped fighting for us. Over time, she made several attempts to reconnect with me, but I successfully avoided her efforts by immersing myself in work, often going on business trips or staying late in the city. When she asked me questions, my responses were reduced to non-verbal gestures, a brief nod if I agreed or a shake of the head to indicate disagreement, without any further explanation. I began sleeping in another room and deliberately arranged my schedule to avoid sharing meals with her. Eventually, the tension became unbearable for her. 7 months later, she cheated on me. I caught her in the arms of another man, a younger one, while she could barely stand on her feet at a bar. That same day, I consulted a lawyer. Thanks to our prenuptial agreement, within 2 months, I stripped her of all her property and savings. She was left without a home, without a loving husband, and without money. I had endured her antics for a long time, but everything has its limits. She got what she deserved. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.